You are listening to episode 42 of the Lewis and Kyle Show with Doone Roisin.
I absolutely learn at least one thing every single day from the women that I speak to. And, you know, some weeks I'm interviewing 5 to 7 times a week. So there's lots of fun stuff going on. And that's absolutely why I love what I do. I'm learning constantly. I broaden my network with these incredible founders who are changing the world through e-commerce and solving global issues.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Kyle Show. If you're new to our podcast, thank you for tuning in. We're really grateful that you're here and excited to have you listening. Lewis and I are students at the University of Alabama, and we're on a journey to deconstruct success stories of interesting entrepreneurs, investors, and people making a big impact on their world. We're hoping that by learning in public, we can keep ourselves accountable to the application of what we learn and to help you to see what's possible and to pick up on principles to help you achieve whatever you want.
In this episode, we talk to Doone Roisin. Doone is the host of Female Startup Club, a podcast and e-commerce education company that teaches millennial women about entrepreneurship through interviews with top female founders across different sectors. To date, she's published over 80 episodes with amazing female leaders in different aspects of business. And through the process of coming on our show and participating in some other projects that we're working on, she's really become a friend and mentor to us in the whole podcasting ecosystem. We had a ton of fun chatting with her about some of the different schemes she's pulled off to land creative positions and different jobs and internships across her journey. We also focus on the things she's learned from literally spending, an hour a day with incredible female founders every day for the past couple of months and what she's learned from all of their insights and experience. And we also get into her story as well. It was really fun. There's a lot of laughter, really kind of fun, lighthearted conversation. I enjoyed re-listening to it today when I went through and edited the bulk of it, and I'm excited for you all to listen to it. So with that, enjoy episode with Doone Roisin from Female Startup Club. Hey, Doone, thank you so much for doing the podcast with us. We're excited to chat.
Hey, me too. I'm so excited.
So real quick for the listeners, could you introduce yourself, kind of explain what you're working on right now and where you're at?
Yes, for sure. I'm Doone Roisin, and I'm the founder of a company called Female Startup Club. FSC is an educational platform to help women in progress learn through insightful podcasts, technical courses, and resources. And the backbone of my company is really a podcast, which is the call to the millennial woman who wants to carve out her own path, make money, and be happy and fulfilled in life. And we shine a spotlight on sharing strategies and learnings from the women who are building, what I consider to be the world's most exciting businesses. And the vision for Female Startup Club is really to create an online college for e-commerce that provides affordable education to empower the next generation of women who are solving global problems through e-commerce, and having that taught by some of the world's most exciting female founders that I get to speak to every day.
I really love the way that you described your show and like the way that you have such a clear and defined avatar for the person that you're trying to go after. And that's something that Lewis and I have struggled to create just because of, all of our interests. But I kind of want to dig into the why of why you started FSC and why you have this passion for sharing these stories of founders. So when did you have the first idea to create this and why did you act on it?
Yeah, so it's been a bit of an evolution for me, and it was kind of at a time in my life where a few things coincided. So at the time I was building not my first business. I was building a business which is called Kinks, and it's an online jewelry business, direct to consumer. And it was so great. It was very fun, very sparkly. I've always been interested in e-commerce. I've always worked in e-commerce, and I'm always sort of looking for businesses that are female focused. And I was getting a lot of creative joy from building the brand, but I just didn't feel like it was something that I wanted to do forever, or like for the next 5 years even. And I didn't find myself being like professionally fulfilled in what I was doing. So I was kind of having those mixed emotions, like, what should I do? What's going on? But at the same time, that was my business. So I was trying to build my business, and I was finding myself reaching out to women in my network who are building incredible businesses, girlfriends of mine who were doing interesting things, not necessarily in the same space, but I was reaching out to them to find strategies and learnings and ask them questions and, just chat really. And I was like, this is so cool. The conversations that I get to have, they're really, really interesting. I'm learning a lot. and I'm, just finding out so much about how other people run their businesses, business models, that kind of thing. And I thought to myself around that time, like, oh, it'd be so cool if I just started sharing these like on my Instagram, because if I'm learning something, surely someone else will learn something from it too. So I started, when I'd catch up with my girlfriends, I would just record like a 10-minute video on IGTV. I'd ask them 6 quick, easy questions, and just kind of like, chat about their business. And at that same time, or around that same time, I was also reading Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. And, I'm sure you guys have read the book. And for anyone who hasn't read the book, it's amazing. It is profiling the world's billionaires, high performers, athletes, And it is such a great book. It's so big. You can just for anyone who hasn't read it, it's broken into 3 different categories: health, wealth, and wellness, I think it is. And so you can just open the book at any page and read like a little bit of information about them and their business. And then Tim Ferriss always asks certain questions, so you can figure out what motivates them, what weird things they're up to, just interesting bits about these high performing people. And the book is awesome, as I say, but sadly, the representation of women in that book is really minimal. I think it's like, 5% or 10% or something like that. And I found myself being like, I want to learn from like the women who are in these positions. I want to learn from women who are doing really exciting things in business. And so those kind of things all combined really kind of got me thinking about Female Startup Club. And I think 2 years before, just by chance, I had actually purchased femalestartupclub.com because I had noticed that I was on GoDaddy just browsing domains, and I had noticed that like you could buy like ParisStartupClub.com, and then I noticed LAStartupClub.com was available, and I ended up buying about 30 different domains for different cities and countries around the world. And then I also just happened to buy FemaleStartupClub.com. So I was like, well, this is a cool domain. Like maybe I could just start publishing some of the content under Female Startup Club. And, then I was like, the Instagram isn't probably the best channel for virality in terms of IGTV. So why not put it into a podcast format? And that's really how Female Startup Club started, with the podcast. And obviously since then it's evolved into, we have our first course now, and we are doing a lot more in the pipeline. So yeah, that's a little bit of an overview about Female Startup Club. I guess the mission of what we're trying to do is to get more women in control of their life, empower women to launch startups and businesses that solve problems. It's obviously so important, but what's also important for women is lifestyle design. I've experienced this myself. A lot of people in my network have experienced this, but we need flexibility when we have babies. Women have trouble getting to being leaders in the top of their field. We need to be leaders. Women are great leaders. We need to create more jobs. We need more diversity in business. And so that's also really part of what we're trying to do. And, then if you think about different data points, it shows that women-led businesses have a higher return in revenue than male-led businesses. For every dollar invested into female-led businesses, it'll generate 2 times as much money as every dollar that's invested into male-led businesses. So the impact of women in business is obviously huge, and there's just such a great opportunity at the moment. So we really want to empower women to launch businesses, launch startups, and take control of their lives.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's an amazing mission. And one of the pieces of Tools of Titans is like bringing out the patterns that come up when interviewing these super high performing people. Mm-hmm. So, the book does underrepresent women. And I think that's something that he actually talks about in in Tribe of Mentors. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But since you took that on yourself and began to interview a ton of really high performing women,
70.
Yeah, like 70.
Yeah.
What patterns have you noticed come up through all those interviews, or are there any?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. And there's 2 different things I can speak to. So after interviewing 70 women these women just are building such incredible businesses, mostly in the e-commerce space, but also in different areas of technology and social impact and that kind of thing. so I have learnings from the podcast just in general, but also at the end, I followed a similar format to Tim Ferriss where I asked the same 6 quick questions at the end of every interview. And that was specifically so that in a few years' time, when I've interviewed a few hundred women, well, by this time next year, I will have interviewed more than 200 women. I'll be able to look back at the data and see what kind of trends come out of that, which is really interesting. So it might be best, I can take you through the 6 quick questions that I ask, and then what the kind of general points are that I get from that. And then I can just talk to you about like a few other learnings that I get from the episodes. But the first question is, what's your why? You know, why are you doing what you're doing? What's your reasoning behind building a business? And something that I've noticed is that every single woman that I've spoken to who has a child has said, you know, I started this business because I want my kids to have a better world when they grow up. I want my grandchildren to have a better place to live. And that's something that it makes sense. It makes total sense. But I was so surprised because it was so consistently a theme right from the word go for anyone who had a child. You know, some women were like, I actually just started the business because I had a baby and I wanted to change their world, kind of thing, which I think is just so incredible and obviously makes a lot of sense. But a lot of what I hear as well is women just want to make the world a better place in general, because we know that things aren't going so well right now, and the world is a bit of a scary place these days. So that's certainly something that came out of that question. The second question I ask is, what's the number one marketing moment that made your business pop? And so that's just really to show, like, for other people watching, to make sure they're kind of like working towards hitting those kind of marketing moments, or what's been working for other people. And you know, it's really an obvious question with obvious answers. It's usually a piece of incredible press, something like being on the Today Show where you've had a mass audience view your product, or someone who was in Oprah's favorite things or something like that. But anyone that I spoke to who had been on Shark Tank, you know, it's obvious that changed the trajectory of their business, and it was a complete step change for those people who have been on Shark Tank. So obviously, like, you know, for products that are mass consumer products, getting on Shark Tank is such a key step for the business. Question number 3 is, where do you hang out to get smarter? And that's, you know, what you're reading, what you're listening to. And it's one of my favorite questions because I get so many recommendations that I read myself and listen to myself. 2 things that came out of that, and it's been brought up a few times, that I discovered were the newsletters Lean Luxe and Fem Street. And they're both, Lean Luxe is a newsletter that talks about luxury D2C brands, and it just compiles great articles in the space. I always discover new brands that I am then inviting onto the show to speak with. It's really, really easy to consume. And Fem Street is by a woman named Sarah. She's in the world of VC, and she's also talking about just the world of VC for D2C brands, which is really interesting. And so I always get great recommendations out of that question. It's, you know, everyone's reading, everyone's listening to podcasts, and everyone's hanging out with people that can get them smarter. That's for sure. Question number 4 is, how do you win the day? And that's around your AM and PM rituals. And this one, a lot of what I heard coming out of that was meditation and breath work. You know, people are doing Wim Hof breathing. People are doing like things I've never even heard of that inspire me to start trying as well. But it's an obvious thing that that founders are trying to calm their minds, you know, take a moment of peace and that kind of thing. And then obviously there are lots of mundane habits that come out of it. Like women with babies are like, you know, I don't have lots of time, but for me, that 10 minutes in the nighttime when I can just do my skincare routine and like have a hot shower is like what makes me win the day, because I just get a moment of solace. So that's quite interesting. Question number 5 is, if you only had $1,000 left in your business bank account, where would you spend it? And that's to highlight, you know, the most important revenue drivers, where they kind of like see their money where they see their current money being able to make more money. It's I guess a question that you would assume it's like really obvious, like, oh, performance marketing, and, you know, put $1 in, get $10 out, or whatever it is. But actually, overwhelmingly, everyone says they would, well, most people say they would give it to their team and give it to the people because that help them build their business, because without their team, they don't have a business. So I just think the thing that comes from that is women really create businesses with empathy, and women really value the people around them, and it's not just about money over everything else. And then the last question I ask is, how do you deal with failure? And obviously to try and understand people's mindset and approach with that. And again, it's overwhelmingly the same answer. Failure is obviously a given in entrepreneurship. There's failure, there's a lot of no's, there's rejection, there's drama after drama, but it's pretty much the same answer, that it's inevitable, and you just need to change your mindset around it to frame it not really as failure, but as a time for learning and a time for growth. So yeah, that's kind of what the questions are that I learn, you know, bits and pieces here and there. When it comes to the podcast in general, it's honestly stuff that I just think it's obvious, but it really is the case. Like the things that come out of the podcast, it's quite like similar in every episode. You know, the first thing is that literally anything is possible. Whatever your idea is, anything is possible with perseverance, with grit, with determination. You can literally do anything. It's just a journey, and you have to commit to that journey. Something that you guys and I have spoken about before is the compound effect. Literally everyone I speak to is like, you know, some days you don't feel like you're moving the needle at all. You're just taking slow steps that are slow and slow and slow and slow, and you don't realize the effect that has. But you wake up 5 years later and you're like, oh my God, I have, you know, a multi-million-dollar business on my hands because I was just taking those small and easy steps every day. Another thing that is really clear in every episode is that building a business and being an entrepreneur is really just two simple things at its core. It's being a problem solver and it's being a salesperson, because every day you're solving problems, you're putting out fires, you're having to do things that you don't necessarily know how to do, and you're teaching yourself, you know, figuring it out as you go. And also every single day you're having to talk about your business and your vision and what you're trying to create to get people on board, whether that's, you know, getting staff on board, whether that's getting new clients, whether that's pitching partnerships. You have to be a salesperson, and that's really the core of any entrepreneur's job, I guess. Another thing that I see constantly, and that I think myself, is that, and I've just mentioned it before, is women are really building businesses with empathy and with heart and soul. They're trying to solve problems in a way that isn't just about profit. Women are creating businesses with people, planet, and profit in mind, not profit above anything else. And that comes up a bit. And in terms of tactical stuff, it just sounds so like simple and so easy, but literally every business is pretty much built on lists, just like comprehensive lists that you're like working your way through. It's all a numbers game. If you get a no, just ask 50 more people and you're going to get a yes, and build your business that way. So that's kind of some of the learnings that I'm picking up, and yeah, it's really interesting to see, you know, there's not some secret recipe and there's not some secret sauce. It is just perseverance. It's that compound effect, and yeah.
Wow.
I just spoke a lot, didn't I?
I mean, it was all great. I think that there's just so much to unpack there. You gave us an entire book, really. You could put a better designed cover than Tools of Titans, Tribe of Mentors, and just share the examples, the specifics that informs all the ideas and thoughts you just shared, and that would be worth reading, and that's worth listening to in the form of your podcast. I think it's kind of funny how I've listened to a couple episodes, obviously not as many as you have because you've listened to all of them and created them all. But just even in a couple of the episodes I have listened to, it's so true. Some of the things you're saying, and even Kyle and I've learned a lot of the similar things about, it's really, no one's come on here and said like very crazy stuff where we're like, oh my God, like what? Like that's the craziest, most complicated, like some people do have super complicated, intricate systems they've designed to like make stuff happen, but that's the vast minority. Most people, it's just, it's a combination of specificity and perseverance and, like you said, and hard work and having a specific idea and solving problems. And I think that's why a lot of people benefit from listening to podcasts. It's just, it takes repetition to fully ingrain those ideas into your head from the host side of the show, right? For the three of us who are actively working on business projects and things related to the podcast, but not related to the podcast, hearing those conversations personally every single day, it's a reminder, because if you think about the programming we get as a society, it's every single day you get influenced by the media you consume. And if the majority of that media tells a story of not everything is possible, take a linear life path, get a job, like do something very traditional, then that's going to be your dominating belief system in your head. But if every day you choose to, substitute the narrative you're getting to be something more positive. So it's like taking a morning bike ride with Female Startup Club, or doing the podcast yourself, or meeting an entrepreneur and hearing their story, or going to guest speaking events, you're going to start over time rewiring the way you think about the world to better match the reality of those successful people. And that's going to make you better prepared to enter the world successfully and to have the anything is possible mindset and actually act on it. And then hopefully, we'll all reach a point where we're super successful and be the ones telling the same story and be like, it wasn't that complicated. It was just a product of X, Y, and Z.
Well, that's absolutely true. And another thing that, I should say is that majority of the women that I speak to, they all start the same as you or I are starting. They're all starting by not having an idea and just figuring it out, and just having that mindset of like, well, I don't know how to manufacture this thing that's never been invented before, but like, I'm sure I could figure it out. And I'm sure I could, go and find a chemist or a lab or this or that, and like just work through those problems. But like, it's possible, because it's possible for anyone. But, it's not people who are like coming at it from like so much experience. Sometimes, yes, they're coming at it from experience, but most of the time, majority of the time, it's people who are just like, they have the mindset of like, yeah, I can figure this out. And they're starting at the same like knowledge base as everyone else. And one other thing that I forgot to say is actually in every single episode, the key to the secret sauce, I guess, that there actually is people just focus on making the best product possible. If you're making the best product possible and word of mouth is inherently built into what you do, of course, people talk about it, people want it. Whereas if you're making something that people don't want, then it's hard to sell something that people don't want.
I completely agree with that. I think the one I listened to most recently was the anti-chafing, the boob sweat, what was that called? Something bum, or what's the product there?
It's Mega Babe with Katie Storino. Mega Babe, yeah. She creates products for women who deal with, normal issues like boob sweat and thigh chafing, but the industry doesn't want to talk about because, it's not sexy. And yeah, 100%. Like it was a really cool episode. She's amazing.
I mean, even the perspective there, like the solution does exist, but it's packaged exclusively for men, right? It's Body Glide. It's this ugly, like super masculine packaging designed for like elite athletes or like that kind of idea. Someone's not going to want to like take that out or like have that show up in their gym bag. So even if your literal solution, right, her actual formulation is probably not that different from a Body Glide or like an existing anti-chafe solution, but packaging it for a specific audience or presenting it in a way that makes it feel like valid to have that problem, like that's solving the problem. Solving the problem doesn't need to be like patenting a new solution or like reaching like a PhD insight. It's just solving it's just making it smaller.
And I think as well, also break it, like another piece to her business is having a voice of making it not weird to have these products, because society and the beauty industry makes it feel like that's some kind of weird thing, or that it's gross, when it's not. It's just a totally normal thing that loads of women around the world are dealing with. So she's having that voice for people who do need to buy those products, which again, like she didn't reinvent some crazy thing. She just packaged it in a different way and took a stance and has a voice for people who need those products.
She had an idea and then she was like, why don't I just make this happen? And then didn't stop. It
Exactly.
existed.
Exactly.
But
Everyone starts from the same place of having an idea.
so
I did
what
know
was
that she had a
your
famous dog, but what was
She
that
did have
question,
a really
Kyle?
famous dog.
what was your idea? You know, you had this e-commerce career before you started Female Startup Club. Was there a moment for you where you had an idea and then you decided that you were going to persevere through and not stop until you had some sort of business?
I mean, I always wanted to have my own business. I definitely felt like I really struggled in the workplace, you know. I really struggled with like authority. I really found like I wasn't inspired by my like bosses or my superiors. I couldn't see myself being them, you know, for my direct reports. And I just felt like I wanted to do things my own way. So that was just always in my soul, I think. And then a few years ago, I met my now husband, and we we met because we were going to start working on building his business together at the time. And you know, just for me, it wasn't about a specific idea, it was about a specific lifestyle. I want to have the freedom to travel. I want to have the freedom to work from home if I want to. I want to work when I have a baby. And I think it wasn't just a specific moment, but rather it was built into me that that's how I wanted to live my life. And I'm someone who is really action orientated. I absolutely do things if I want to do them. And so if I have an idea, which is often, I'll just run with it and see how it goes and get started. If you don't start, you'll never know.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think one of Lewis and I's favorite quotes or favorite thing to think about is just starting and then not stopping, and how stopping is failure. Like everything else is learning, you know?
That's
And
so funny that you say that. Oh, sorry, you go.
well, you're the guest. So what came up in your head?
So PA, my husband, Pierre Antoine, him and I have just been talking. He just the other day was like, we should just never like stop, you know, like just don't ever stop. And it was something that he'd read. I think it was maybe in a book by Ross Edgley or something like this, but he was like, people just stop, and that's why things don't keep going and don't work. We just need to not stop. And I was like, yeah,
Exactly.
we just need to not stop. We just need to keep going. And it's the compound effect of, you know, another interview, another this, another that. And eventually we'll wake up one day and we'll be like, wow, look what we built.
It's a
This is
simple
really cool.
formula, you know, start and don't stop. And I think that that's something that you're trying to get through to your audience, the people that are listening to the Female Startup Club. Do you have any stories from your audience of people that listen to the show and then, you know, started a business or changed their life in some way that you've received? And which one's your favorite?
I mean, I received just the most beautiful messages, which are so kind. And so sweet, often like telling me like that they listened to a podcast, it really changed the way they were thinking about something, or it sparked some kind of idea for them, or you know, it changed something for them. I could probably like find a couple and read them to you, but off the top of my head, it's tricky to remember specifics.
Mhm.
But yeah, I do receive so many kind messages, which is just really heartwarming, and it always makes my day. It makes me smile, and I'm like, oh gosh. And I just love when people reach out, because I think it's something that I always do too. I love to tell people if they've brightened my day because I listened to a podcast and, you know, I learned something from it, or whatever it is. Even if they read it and don't reply, that kind of stuff sinks in, you know. And yeah, it's a really nice feeling.
That's awesome. It's one of our favorite things too, to just hear that someone, it doesn't have to be like someone started a huge thing. It's just like, I listened to this and like today, you know, instead of watching a movie, I like decided to exercise. Just like a very basic one-off thing like that, the creator appreciates hearing. Uh,
Yes, absolutely.
and I think that is even true at scale. It's just like you said, you reach out to someone who has a huge following and you say, this was a great article, or I really like this. I think one thing I've been trying to do for that, like to get the attention of the huge creators, is on their like less popular platforms. Because I've noticed there'll be people on Twitter who are humongous on Twitter and like don't respond to anything you say on Twitter. It's like, hey, I read your article, I really liked it, it was great, and like you never get a response for that. Or you send them a DM, like, I listened to your podcast, it really inspired me to do this, and they don't respond. But you see
Hmm.
like, oh, they have a YouTube channel, and like their YouTube channel only has 500 subscribers, even though their Twitter is like 100,000. Like clearly they're trying to get some attention here. So then if you put the engagement on that other platform, they'll actually like appreciate it. And then you still realize like they do, and they don't have that ego built up yet. You know what I mean? Like you comment them on their successful blogger and you say, this is a great blog post. They're like, oh, they know.
Who are you
like,
talking about, Lewis? I don't know.
Not important. They know that. They know that. But like when they're trying to be new and proven, like every person still likes to be validated and like get those messages from their audience. Like what you're doing is making an impact.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's a really great strategy. I'm gonna use that.
It's the undiscovered platforms. Everyone's trying to, once they cap out, they have to try a new place. So, and that's where they care for that early feedback again. Like Joe Rogan's not going to care if you tell him this was a great podcast. He knows that, but I mean, he's too big, but like someone in that middle ground.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Totally. That's amazing.
Yep. So one question I want to ask about the actual business side of your podcast, because you're definitely ahead of Kyle and I in this sense, is your online course. You've put out a product related to your audience. How did this come about, where you kind of decided what product to make for your audience and kind of the process of making it and using that to turn your podcast from just a bunch of really inspiring interviews into, the seed of an incredible business with a, future vision of teaching women about e-commerce?
Well, so the course is basically for women to master the technical skills needed to launch and scale highly profitable Facebook and Instagram ads. That's what the course is at its core. And for anyone listening, it's about 6 hours long. It will take you some time to do it because it's designed so that you action as you go with worksheets and templates and that kind of thing as well. And something that we found in every single interview that I did was performance marketing is part of your strategy. Every business now, one of the elements that makes them successful will be their performance marketing efforts, and every brand who's winning has that tap turned on. That lever has to be turned on. And so we knew that was like a critical part of the journey in every entrepreneur's brand. But I was very lucky in that my partner has a performance marketing agency. So we teamed up to create the course together and be able to use the strategies that they use on their female-focused clients to share with everyone that's in our audience and in our community. So we were really able to leverage our knowledge and our learnings together to create something. And that's just really like one step of what we're trying to do. So we started there, but the vision is so much bigger than that. Like right now, if you want to learn about e-commerce, you either have to work for an e-commerce store or an e-commerce company to get some skills and to get some knowledge. You can find resources online, like here or there, or you can just launch your own business through trial and error and potentially fail, potentially waste a lot of money. Whereas for me, if you ask me what the number one school of e-commerce is, or for e-commerce, there's not a clear person that comes to mind, and it's not like widely known. So the vision is really to create a corner of the internet that's the go-to for premium quality, in-depth learning from female experts around the world who are building exciting e-commerce businesses, where you can graduate with a profitable business and you have the toolkit to be able to do that. Kind of something like masterclass meets like in-depth training. And so we have the first course available, and we know that that's like part of the puzzle. It's what every brand should be doing. And we also know that's what people often struggle with because it's quite technical. There's a lot to learn. Facebook changes things all the time. So yeah, that's just the first step of the journey. We really want to build out something quite comprehensive. We want to partner with all these women that I'm speaking to. They're, experts in certain niche areas that their learnings will be so valuable for other women who are just getting started or who want to get started. And an example of that might be something like, I interviewed recently the founder of Lashify, Sahara Lottie. She's just incredible. She's visionary. She invented this product that didn't exist before. It's just such a huge brand now, but she has like 70 patents around the world. She is like incredibly knowledgeable in IP. And so imagine learning from her just the specifics around IP and patents, you know, it's better to be learning from her than potentially some written article that you find online. So yeah, that's what we're working towards.
I think that's a good transition to our bonus round, because what you're describing there is exactly like something I want to ask you about in the third door. Like literally, like word for word, the core idea of the book, The Third Door, is, you know, Alex says, the things I'm learning in school aren't that inspiring. I want to be taught XYZ by the person who is absolutely crushing XYZ. And here you are creating, you know, it's not for college students trying to launch their career, but it's for women trying to launch careers in e-commerce. And it's, instead of just, you know, boring classroom lecture by professors like theoretical marketing, it's, here's Lashify. They have 500,000 followers on Instagram, all around a new product they created. Here's the person who does their IP. Here's their founder. Let them teach you this, and then help all the other pieces, like as you continue working through the podcasts and identifying the other common pain points or the other common bottlenecks people are running into, that you just happen to have, you know, friends or relationships with people who are crushing it and inspiring stories. Like that is a third door inspired way to teach curriculum. So between our discovery call and now you read the book at our recommendation. So you definitely have evidence that you follow through on the book recommendations, for sure.
It was a great book. I really liked it. I was just saying to Kyle, I finished it in like a day, similar to you guys.
No, it's hard not to. My mom finished it on a plane ride since the last time we talked. She read it like the whole way. It's really inspiring. And I think it just, why we like it so much is that so many of the ideas and the mindsets that we're trying to like communicate, I think this book does a really good job of communicating, and you'll probably come away from reading the book either strengthening the beliefs you had or about this, or introducing you to some new ways of thinking, exponential thinking, and just encourage you to really adopt the anything is possible. But when we first explained what the book kind of talked about to you, you said, oh, I have tons of those stories where I've done that type of creative energy to land like an interesting job or create an opportunity for myself. But do any of those come to mind that you'd like to share?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was saying to Kyle just before, like, for me, that kind of thinking is just, again, like to my core. I think I've always been like that. It's not just a simple black and white, you know, apply for a job and be done with it. There's always like another way around getting the attention of the people you want to get the attention of. But yes, I have some funny stories, from some funny ones from when I was younger, which I will share with you guys. One of them was, I need to go back and like think about what they were, but one of them was, I had just finished college and I had studied like design and visual communications and things like that. And I at the time really wanted to work for magazines. I wanted to work in the publishing industry, but I didn't know how because I didn't have any experience. And I lived in a city called Brisbane in Australia, which, you know, it doesn't have lots of places where you can work in that kind of industry. But there was a magazine, I think maybe it was a free magazine that was sent out with every paper, like nationally or like within the state or something like that. And I knew they were like close to where I was living and working at the time. So, and I just thought like, oh, how can I get in front of this? How can I get in front of this woman? She was the director of the company, and maybe see if I can get like an internship or a job or something. There wasn't any job listed at the time or anything like that, but you know, who doesn't want someone to come and work for free and just like help out and do stuff and get coffees or whatever? I was like, surely someone will want that. So essentially what I wanted was, you know, a moment of her time. So I went to the nursery and I bought a thyme plant, like a thyme herb. And I went and bought like this cute little pot, potted it up, made it all really pretty. And I had a business card with my, like, essentially a resume / portfolio. And I just wrote on the back of the card, I'd love a moment of your time. And so I also kind of wanted to see what it was like inside the office just for fun. And I kind of wanted to see like where she sat and all this kind of thing. So I thought it would be funny if like I dressed up as a delivery driver and delivered it myself. So I remember I dressed up in one of those like I don't know why I thought this was the uniform of like a delivery person, but I dressed up in like high vis, some oversized high vis shirt and like little, you know, Nike shorts and Nike shoes. And I like arrived at their office and was like, oh, I'm like hand delivering this to, you know, da da da. And so they let me in, and I like went up to her office and like left it on her desk, and actually she wasn't there. And my thought process was like, it'll be pretty cool. She sees me as the delivery driver or the delivery person. And then, you know, when we actually meet up, because I was certain we would meet up, she'll be like, oh, didn't you deliver this? That's so weird. Anyway, she wasn't there, and maybe that would have backfired. I don't know. But she called me like that day or the next day or something, and we ended up having a meeting, and I negotiated getting a 12-week internship with her. So that was pretty cool. I was pretty happy with myself. Another experience that I had was also while I was in Brisbane, there was a job going that I wanted. And the application form was, the application process was to send your portfolio to an email address that was yo, check this shit out at laundrycreative.com. And at the time, at the time I had been working for another magazine, like doing kind of layout, creative, copywriting. It was a really small indie magazine that was just so cool at the time. And I pulled apart the magazine that I'd like done and stuck it up on my wall. And I wrote, yo, check this shit out at dooneroisin.com. www.dooneroisin.com, and I like painted it. I covered it in sequins. It was like a full, you know, piece, because I knew what the office that they worked from was like. I used to run along the river in the mornings, and their office was completely glass. So if you imagine like walking into your office in the morning, the whole thing was glass and they could see out over the river. So I was like, well, I could just deface the side of the building and stick this up, and like they'll see my, you know, portfolio, essentially like a real life version of it, and my website. So I, at like 2 a.m., I asked my boyfriend at the time, I think it was actually our first date, I asked him if he wanted to come and deface a building with me at 2 a.m, and he said yes. And I went and I stuck it up on the outside of the building, and I left a little note for security that was like, hey, this is part of a job application, like please don't take it down. And then the next morning, the CEO called me at 9 a.m. and was like, oh my God, when can I meet you? This is amazing. You know, was super excited about it, shared it everywhere on Facebook and all this kind of thing. And actually I didn't end up getting the job because it wasn't the right job for either of us. But it was still just such a cool experience, and he really loved it. And yeah, I think I've got a few other examples of things that I do like that, which was super fun as well. It's so fun to have those stories and to be able to share and inspire other people who are going through like job applications and things like that.
I just think that, you know, once you get a taste for it and you realize like, if I just put the amount of effort is not that much higher at all than like trying to beat yourself up to have a perfect resume or polished in another way. It's the effort to force yourself to stop and think of something creative and then do it. And you just get addicted to that and want to do it. I love those stories. That's amazing.
It also takes some belief in yourself too. You know, you have to believe that your idea is good. You're not being stupid. Like it takes a lot of confidence. So I respect that a lot. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's very fun.
So I know earlier on you mentioned that one of the things that you really wanted to get out of your freedom was being able to travel and being able to go where you wanted when you wanted. So can you share a experience that you've had while traveling that has like really impacted you?
Yeah, I absolutely can. I think it's not just, you know, one experience that I had, but in the last 2 years, my husband and I, we decided to just travel full time, and we kind of had this moment late one night. It was 2018, November 2018, and we were like moving back to Australia. We were going to settle there, and we were just chatting like late in bed, which is, you know, where all good ideas come to life for us. And we were like, you know, we don't have a mortgage, we don't have kids, we can work online. Why don't we just like sell all of our stuff and just like go to all the places in the world that we want to live before we have to like, you know, do really serious adult stuff like pay a mortgage and have kids, and have chickens and all those things that you want in life. And so we basically told our friends at our farewell that actually we weren't going to move to Australia, and we moved to Bali for 6 months. And we just had the most magical experience, really shifting away from the life that we'd been living in London, which was fast paced, it was intense, it was grey, it was like gloomy, and we moved to this magical island, which, you know, the people are so beautiful, everyone's so happy. It's just, you know, so off the grid. So we spent 6 months there, then we moved to Europe, and we spent some time in Monaco, we spent some time in Paris, we spent a lot of time between Geneva and the Swiss mountains. We went to Australia for a few months, we got married while we were there. We lived, you know, just a few months everywhere that we wanted to. And then the end of that trip was meant to be 3 months in the US, living between LA and New York. But, you know, at the start of this year, we were here for 2 weeks before our flight, and then COVID hit, and that meant that we couldn't go to the US. So we had to shift our plans, and we stayed in the UK for a while, and then we went back to Switzerland, and now we've just settled here. But I think that experience of like getting off the grid, living completely on our own terms, there's a lot of strength that gave us, and a lot of personal growth, and to be able to experience different culture, to be able to experience just so many different moments. It was really incredible, and something that we really know we'll remember that 2-year period for the rest of our lives, you know, for the good and the bad, living out of suitcases, you know, internet breaking everywhere, like all, you know, anything that could go wrong would also go wrong. But it was just such an amazing experience. And I think for us, it's something that it's not one particular moment, but it's the choice that we made for that 2-year period that was just so out of this world.
Are you decidedly settling in London for a long period of time now?
Yeah, so I think so. We were going to move back to Australia this year, like after the 2 years kind of thing. We thought, you know, we'll move back to Australia, but because of COVID, it forced us to change our thinking, and Australia is quite difficult at the moment with everything that's going on to get back into. So yeah, I think we're going to stay here for the foreseeable future. We'd still really like to come to the US for a while, but obviously until there's like a vaccine and that kind of thing, it's probably just not on the cards. But we'll see. We might hate it. We might be like, you know what, London's not for us. So who knows? I think we're quite flexible in our thought process of where we are. As long as we're together and as long as we're happy, like we could live anywhere.
Well, when you do come to the US, you know, Alabama's not as glamorous as Geneva or Paris, but we've got some barbecue, so we'll figure that out for sure.
Yes, we will definitely come and visit you guys. Sweet Home Alabama is a great movie. I've loved it for most of my life, so I'll have to come and check it out.
Okay.
That's funny. I have another question, easier question. I had on my notes from our last call that you're into cold showers. Is that correct? Is that just me thinking about cold showers while talking to you and just wrote that down, or you have a story about cold showers?
I have a story about cold showers. Who does cold showers? I'm sure it must have been something connected to Tim Ferriss, but I just one day decided like I was going to do cold showers. So it was like the middle of winter. I was in Switzerland in the mountains, and the rainwater is snow, like rainwater from the glaciers. So it's freezing. It's absolutely freezing. And yeah, I just decided that I was going to start my day with cold showers. I was going to improve my mood. And my thought process was like, if I can like start my day every day with a freezing cold shower, you know, no hot water, no starting with hot water, no finishing with hot water, 2 minutes minimum freezing cold shower. I was like, I feel like not a lot of people do this. Like not a lot of, as in there are lots of people who do it, but like, I don't know anyone else who does this. Like if I can do this, I can get through absolutely anything. I can conquer my day. Like this has some like gritty stuff to it to be able to do it. So I did that for 4 months over winter. It was amazing. It was really challenging. The first week I cried like in my head a lot because it was so hard, but it was awesome. Maybe I should start again. I kind of stopped, like, I think we changed location, and when you change location, it's like my routine always gets a bit of a mix up, but yeah, highly recommend it. Cold showers to start your day. It is something that improves your mood. It's a booster. it is likened to like some kind of like I think Wim Hof does it. That's where I learned about it. I started doing Wim Hof breathing and his ice cold like shower vibe. And, you know, he likens it to some kind of like self-given high kind of thing. And it's totally true. It's amazing, but it is really tough.
I love Wim Hof breathing. I've done it a lot, and like what brought me onto it was I did the push-up challenge, and I'd never done like 30 push-ups before. And I did 45 the first time. I was like, "What is this magic?" This is a long time ago, but
PA held his breath for like 5 minutes, and it was like,
that's awesome.
I was like, okay, you have to stop now, because I got so freaked out. It was just like, I don't know, making weird sounds and weird movements, and I was like, oh my god, like I'm gonna be the one that was next to you when you died. Like, you need to stop.
So anyway. I know that you're a big fan of My First Million, and it's something that you brought up on our first podcast, and I've been listening pretty recently to a lot of them. And kind of the big idea around that show is ideas and like new things that you've come across and stuff like that. And that's something that I've kind of wanted to work into the show with Lewis. So what new idea or like new business model have you come in contact with recently that interests you?
Oh gosh, that is a good question. You know, I don't even know what the answer is off the top of my head. I received this email. I don't know if I told you guys the last time that we spoke. I received this email from a guy called Wes, and he basically summarizes every episode and kind of pulls in their certain ideas in there. And I always just like love like browsing the ideas that they talk about, like, I don't know, startup insurance for e-commerce and this kind of thing. But I don't know if I have a great genius idea. What's one of yours? Maybe it'll spark an idea for me.
I didn't expect this to get turned back on me.
You didn't expect a brainstorming session to lead you to need to brainstorm?
I had an idea, and then you know how it goes. Let me think for a second.
It's a tough question.
It's such a tough question. Do you have one?
Okay. I got one. So I think that this is very much a product of my environment, because I live in a townhouse, and there's townhouses near me, right? Like all around me, basically. And in one of the front yards of these townhouses, they set up a projector and a couch. And like every night they're out there just like chilling with like a projector and a couch. And it looks really ratchet. I don't like the way it looks. I don't want it to be a part of the aesthetic of where I live. But I think that there could be a way to make it look really nice, make it like all built in and set up to where you're creating a really good community for the complex or whatever. And I think that if you could do that on a large scale to where people are like outside, and you know, like the biggest thing with real estate, in my opinion, is trying to, not the biggest thing, but creating a community is very important. And I think that could be a way to assist in that, is like getting people outside together, you know, allowing for these like interactions to happen, or creating an environment for that to happen. I'm not sure about COVID, but you know, lots of people had it.
Goddamn COVID. You sparked something in me. I thought of something, and maybe you should do this. This would be so cool. What annoys me the most after moving around, like we've lived in so many different apartments, so many apartments are just so ugly, and they really need like cosmetic changes. And I'm like, what if there was some kind of like huge startups, because I imagine the cost side of things would be really difficult to get it cheap enough for renters to be able to do. But for renters to be able to get someone to come in, easily like repaint the color that they want. So if they want blue walls, they can have blue walls. And then if they want parquet floor, they just get the parquet floor. And then that same company, when they move out, will come and like change it all back to like the standard like white walls, you know, plain carpet, plain blah, blah, blah. But especially as people move away from like buying the house that they live in, because people want to travel more, people want more flexibility, and being able to come in and make the rental feel like their home with their choices of things that they would want on the floor and on the walls, with those kind of like cosmetic changes. I just think like that would be such a game changer. And I would so do that, because, you know, me and my husband, we don't plan to live in the house that we buy. We plan to like live in houses that we rent. That doesn't mean to say we won't buy houses, but not houses for us. And right now, for where we are in our life, that means like I want to change things like the carpet and the floor and the walls and that kind of thing. So that would be super cool.
I like the idea.
Great,
Yeah,
you start it. It'll work in the US.
A bit of the wrong target market, because I can live in a space full time for 3 years and still not decorate it.
Yeah, you can see there's not much of my walls.
Maybe older demographic.
I think you might want a female founder.
30s that are like, what are they called? Is it called Henry? High earners but not rich yet. Yeah, Henry. No.
Yeah.
High earners not rich yet.
What's that in the context of?
So like someone who earns a lot of disposable income but they're not rich yet.
Oh, yeah.
And so like targeting that demographic of people.
You think they're the people who like this product?
A renter who would also want to spend a lot of money to redo their apartment for a short period of time.
Yeah, like if you're going to rent a house for a year, or if you're going to, you're going to live somewhere for minimum 2 years, as if you can't spend like a few $1,000s, and maybe there's some kind of payment plan that it breaks it out, a few $100s a month or something to revamp the place, and then it doesn't cost the landlord anything. Like it goes back to normal when you leave, or maybe the landlord can choose to keep it. Yeah. Like it's cheaper to invest $5,000 into a rental than to, save a deposit for a house, which is, $100,000. That's my thoughts.
Kyle, that was our first experiment with the idea segment. So thank you for participating and being
I think it went well, honestly. I do.
I think it leads to it's more likely to something we want to avoid that I'm sure you can relate to is we have someone come on here and they basically don't say anything they haven't already said on another podcast. That's like our ultimate end goal to avoid. Like you bring on someone who is so polished and has done so many podcasts, and there's just the standard battery of questions of tell the story of your business and all the different parts of it and the main related things and the backstory. Like they've probably answered that question before, but kind of like, be creative on the spot might lead to might be a way of proofing or guaranteeing that you're unlikely to get them to just be like an author, right? Like an author's Alex Benayan's told the third door story a million times, but it's like, Alex, how would you create a third door story for this new theoretical situation? And that would force so I think it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I reckon run with it. It's good. You just have to take a minute to ponder, but I reckon it's good. I like it.
Yeah, we're playing with it. So I think this is going to be our last question here. What is your favorite part of what you do?
What is my favorite part of what I do? Well, it's such an easy answer. My favorite part of what I do is interviewing the women that I get to speak to. It's definitely the best part of my day. I absolutely learn at least one thing every single day from the women that I speak to. And, some weeks I'm interviewing 5 to 7 times a week. So there's lots of fun stuff going on. And that's absolutely why I love what I do. I'm learning constantly. I broaden my network with these incredible founders who are changing the world through e-commerce and solving global issues. And, it's really, really inspiring for me. And, I know that having more women in business creates a greater impact on the world. So it's really cool.
I completely agree. Recording interviews is definitely the favorite thing I do on a regular basis. So
amazing.
Well, for people who like this conversation, they are biting at the edge of their seats to hear these female founders. Where should we send them to learn more about you, your podcast, your business, any of that stuff?
Oh my gosh, definitely subscribe to the Female Startup Club podcast. You can find it on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Always love a good rating and review, so feel free to drop me in one of those as well. But you can also reach me on Instagram at Doone Roisin, DOONEROISIN. I love to chat. Feel free to reach me in the DMs, or you can find Female Startup Club on Instagram at Female Startup Club. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I had so much fun.
Thank you for listening to that interview with Doone. It was, it's always great to talk with her, as we've had the chance to talk with her a few more times since we released that podcast and beforehand. A couple of my takeaways from that episode are, something that we talked about early on, I think, is the third door attitude that she's applied across many different domains in her life. But it's just interesting for me to talk to somebody who's sort of living that out. You know, it's like in college here, you're not always running into people that have that same attitude that I desire to have. I'm not sure if I've fully lived up to it in the same way that she has or other people have, but you know, it's something I aspire to have. So it's just great to hear her talk about that. And then the other thing is, you know, I have not traveled as much as you have, Lewis, and it's something that I want to do really deeply. And she's been all over the world and spent months and months kind of doing a world tour in Bali and all these different places. And it's just so obvious to me the value that you can get out of that. Like, you know, it's like money can't buy you what that gives you. And so through that conversation, it sort of reinvigorated a desire in me to seek out the options to go and find that travel where it is in the world.
I say do it when you can. It's awesome when it's an option for everyone. Real quick, my takeaways, got a few. First one is that Doone just goes all in. She is so hardcore right off the bat, and she doesn't even like, I don't even know if she realizes it sometimes. She's just like, yeah, so I decided I was going to take cold showers. I think I did that every day for 4 months during the winter. I'm like, that's longer than most.
Like in Switzerland too.
Yeah, in Switzerland, in the mountains. Like she's literally bathing in ice. And for her, just like all in every day for 4 months, first thing in the morning. That's like as extreme as you can take and you have it like that. I know people that are tough or want to say they're tough and they do it for a week and like feel good about themselves. And like they should, because it's hard. But she's just like casual, like, yeah, it was a bullet point, 4 months every day in the Swiss mountains. So she's like,
I watched one YouTube video about the benefits. So I just
watched one video. I heard someone said Wim Hof, and I was like, all right, here we go. Next 4 months of my life. And that attitude of just being hardcore and willing to just plunge right into the deep, metaphorically and literally in the cold shower sense, is so infectious. In the other work that she does, she was like, oh, I have this podcast about the domain. I'm going to send it, and just publishing at an absurd frequency and not at all compromising quality. I mean, I've binged a ton of her episodes in prep for the podcast with her, a follow-up conversation we did today, actually, and all sorts of fun stuff. And they're good episodes every single time. She's just capable of just a high volume, and it shows. Other thing is diverse guests leads to diverse answers. Doone brought up all sorts of interesting stuff. We did the idea segment in this episode and played around with that, which was pretty fun. And the idea of decor while traveling in your rentals is something I certainly would not think of, because I like to live in bare rooms for whatever reason. I probably would prefer a decorated room. I'm just not the type of person to do it. But point is, ideas like that and thoughts like that just don't come up if we don't talk to different people. So that's always a helpful reminder. And the last thing is just the convex upside to going after a cold outreach. So Doone had found us through some cold outreach she was doing to network with other podcasters. And I was just like, hey, this is awesome. Like, let's have a virtual coffee, just because she sounded cool. And like, that's led to all sorts of interesting things that have come from that in the coming months. We're releasing in the next couple weeks an episode with her husband, who was also totally awesome. And all of these things came from me just seeing her email and being like, yeah, sure. Like, let's get a virtual coffee because you seem really cool. And we hit it off, and that's all. And you just
now we're friends.
And now we're friends. And you just heard a cool conversation. But that's what I learned in this episode, and those are the main sticking points for me. I'm going to sign us off now with the typical jargon I throw at you at the end of the episode for the people that listen all the way to the end, which, by the way, we appreciate. Lewis and Kyle have social media accounts that are all vaguely related to the names Lewis and Kyle and or Lewis and Kyle's show. We've been learning a lot about the value of a specific platform and focusing there, and that's something we definitely intend to do. But in the meantime, that's a decision we have not made, which means you can find us on all major platforms. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and the other ones, and LinkedIn.
TikTok.
And LinkedIn. LinkedIn's kind of popping off, honestly. That's because I invited, like, it's like you have 100 free connections to invite. I'm like, all right, here we go. Let's use all of 100. And the conversion rate's been decent because I guess people don't hate me. Anyway, what's that?
We don't want to talk about our TikToks. We don't want to send you there, but we do have that. We just hope that people come from TikTok to here, not from here to TikTok.
We're trying to save people from TikTok by posting videos of me screaming about things, I guess. And then Kyle being like, see, you don't need to scream about that. You can make the same point more slowly, and it would be the same point, except better. But that's what we're doing on TikTok. If you want to help us out, the number one most helpful way to do that would be to share the show with a friend and or leave a 5-star rating or any rating or review. It doesn't have to be 5-star, whatever you think we deserve on Apple Podcasts. Kyle says 5 for those of you watching on video. But that's all for this episode. We plan to release another in another week. Have a good one. Thank you so much for listening. Would always appreciate to hear from you in the DMs with your thoughts on what we're doing. That's it though. Thanks guys.